Hello students, welcome to class. Today I'm going to discuss on a lesson called The Beginnings of a Miracle. The title, The Beginnings, means the starting, and miracle means an unexplainable, or even science cannot explain. It's something very unexpected, or it can be a beautiful event that would really change the course of a person's life. We all dream and hope for miracles in our life so that these miracles can bring new wonders to our life. In the same way, the story talks about Helen Keller, who was an American author and the first American graduate for the blind and deaf. She had suffered a lot in her childhood. She was not born deaf and blind, but when she was 19 months old, almost 2 years old, she was attacked by a disease, rubella, and she became blind and deaf. And from then on, it was very difficult for her parents to look after young Helen Keller. They had really no idea how to deal with Helen Keller, because Helen Keller was not an easy child, or she was a special child, and it was not easy for them to tackle with her. And in the name of miracle came Annie Sullivan, a 20-year-old young lady who had passed out from the Parkins School for the Deaf and Blind, and she came to become the teacher of Helen Keller. Fortunately, she became the best teacher, and she really patiently and very effortlessly she dealt with Helen Keller and made real breakthrough about the methods she applied to teach blind and deaf Keller. As we go on with the lesson, we'll come to know more about that. So let's move on with some of the very important facts in the lesson. The entire lesson is about the relationship between Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan. So the lesson begins with the introduction that the most important day in all my life is the one on which my teacher, Annie Mansfield Sullivan, came to me. Me here is Helen Keller, who is talking about her life. I am filled with wonder, and I consider the immeasurable contrast between the two lives which it connects. So there is two lives there, the life of Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller, how they got connected, and both their lives are different, but again there is a lot of similarity between them. It was 3 months before I was 7 years old. On the afternoon of that eventful day, I stood on the porch, dumb, expectant. I gazed from my mother's signs and from the hurrying to and fro in the house that something unusual was about to happen. So I went to the door and waited on the steps. I did not know what the future held of marvel, or to the door and waited on the step. I did not know what the future held of marvel or surprise for me. Now here marvel means wonder. So she was unsure, Helen Keller, what future lies ahead, and how would she be very marveled, or would she wonder what would happen next in her life, because she can sense that there was something unusual happening around the house. The mother was busy and they were running to and fro as if something's about to happen. It was not the usual daily happenings. It was unusual that day. So that is how the story starts. Annie compares herself to a ship lost in the dense, dark, foggy environment among the sea waters. A ship that would get lost in this darkness. She too was lost like that ship. She was waiting for a light in her life. We know Annie Sullivan, who was going to come. Maybe she would become the miraculous light that would bring a new life to Helen Keller. First lesson and encounter with Annie Sullivan was very interesting. Annie Sullivan, she made Helen Keller write on her palm with her fingers, moving her fingers, the word doll. DOLL. And Helen was so happy and proud about her new, lesson or her new achievement. She went to her mother and expressed her, a very pleasure that she had learned something. So that was the beginning. Difficult for a blind, little girl to understand the world around her because our world is filled with darkness. Annie Sullivan had a hard time trying to train little Helen Keller. Many a times Helen Keller used to confuse between words like mug and water. She never felt that both the things were different. Sometimes she would get so angry and she would throw things, like she threw the new doll and broke it, and she was not very sad about it. One very interesting paragraph in your text, I'll just read it out. We walked down the path to the well house. At the well house, my teacher placed my hand under the spout of the water that's falling from the well, the mouth. As the cool stream gushed over one hand, she spelled into the other the word water. And it's a very interesting way how Annie Sullivan did it. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motions of her fingers. In one hand, the gushing water that fell out of the well, mouth of the well, she could feel the water, the cool stream of water, and on the other hand, Annie Sullivan spelled the word water, WATER, spelled all the letters, with her fingers. And that's when little, Helen learned that and felt what is water. And after that, she experienced something very beautiful. There was something miracle that happened. She suddenly realized that everything she touched and felt had a name, and it as if was given life to it. So try to read those two paragraphs. You'll come to know what effect and how Annie Sullivan tried to put sense and understanding into a blind and deaf Helen Keller. Annie Sullivan knew that Helen Keller was a very difficult child, and with her parents around, it would be very, very difficult for her to train her. So it was very important that she was separated from her parents so that she would learn and she would try to behave. And because Helen before that was extremely impossible to be taught, and she was not at all ready to learn. Annie Sullivan had a very hard time, to discipline her. And Helen Keller was so stubborn because she was overindulgent, indulged by her parents. And her parents were so overindulgent that it was difficult for Annie Sullivan to manage with her way of, tackling with Helen Keller. However, you can see that Annie did not give up. I thought I would keep trying to discipline her. When Helen came upstairs for her lesson, I arranged the objects on the table as usual, except the cake, which I always give her in bits as a reward. So there was a reward and punishment method she applied here. When Helen tried to be a nice student, she would give her a bit of cake that she used to place there. And if she would spell a word correctly and quickly, and also she would be awarded that. I showed her the napkin and pinned it around her neck, then tore it off and threw it on the floor. That's what Helen used to do before. And we began the lesson as usual. I repeated this performance and I think she understood perfectly well. Doing what Helen used to do in a very stubborn and arrogant way, even not only teach her how to learn words, but Annie also taught her the real qualities and behavior of a girl. And if you read the lesson towards the end, you will know that how patient was Annie Sullivan as a teacher. So it was a great salute to her. She was indeed an unsung hero who created Helen Keller. So the heroic deed, the force behind Helen Keller was Annie Sullivan. So read the story, it's very interesting, and try to understand the central idea of the story. Here you are going through only two characters, Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller, and including her parents. But most importantly is the central idea of the story is about how patience and tolerance can really pave way. You should not give up. Even the darkest hour can become the brightest hour in one's life. Thank you.